Hi, welcome. In this video, I'm going to build on top of the previous sample where I showcase how to manage the calculation options using Office scripts on Excel files that are set to manual mode. What I'm going to do in this sample is to showcase how we can not only calculate using Office scripts, but also extract pieces of data that you may want to use for further processing, such as sending an email. Specifically, what I want to do is on this data that I'm showing, which contains invoice data, amounts, and discounts, I want to select the customer names and the amount due and create some visualization, a chart, and email the data and the chart over to another user who may want to review that in an email as an email attachment. So in order to do that, I will need kind of two things. One, I want to write a script that achieves all of that and returns the images out of this out of the script, and then a Power Automation flow that accepts that and emails that out to a intended recipient. So to do that, what I want to do is out of this chart that has the data plus the totals row, and only select the data that I'm interested in. So I'll just kind of do this manually to make sure that I'm heading the right way. So here are the two columns that I'm interested in. I'm just going to paste this in a new sheet and just look at maybe the chart that I want to create. So that looks good. And so you saw that I kind of selectively added two columns and I created the chart. So obviously I want to do this programmatically. So to do that, I will switch back to the automate tab and then record actions. So I can kind of figure out how to do this in a programmatic fashion. So here I'll go back to the same data that I'm interested in. I'll select that and then create a chart. Okay, so I think that should give me enough to get started with. So you'll see that it's creating a chart on the sheet that I'm on, and then using the range that I selected as a way to create the chart. So for now, I'll just comment this out. I'm going to use this a little bit later, but initially I'm more interested in just extracting the data and then adding to a new sheet and then creating the chart on top of it. So to do that, I want to get these two columns from this table and create a new sheet and then apply that two columns on the sheet and then reuse this thing that I recorded here, reuse the script to create the chart. So to do that, first I'm going to get the actual data I'm interested in. So let's say it is in a table. So I'll get the table reference, get worksheet. I'm going to use the invoice amounts as the name of the sheet that I always want to refer to, and get the first table of this sheet. And I know that this is the only table. I mean, it will always be the same table. So if I have that much information, I can just directly get the first table. Otherwise, you can use the get table API if you know the table ID or the table name. And then from here, I'm going to extract the data, which is the actual values or text associated with it. So I'll go to the table, get range associated with the table, and I'll get the texts. Okay, so this is going to give me the actual text value. If you need to use sort of some arithmetic action, say you want to compute, what you want to do is get the values. But given that I'm only interested in creating visualization, I can get the texts. So now that I have the text, I want to write some processing logic to just extract these two. One way to do that would be iterate over the rows just to map over it, and for each of the row just return the columns that I'm interested in, so which is column 2 and column 5. Now I can just display that and see what it shows. Okay, so it has all the data that I expected, the first one being the column customer name, and then the amount due, and then the last one being the totals row. So for the chart that I'm interested in, I don't need the totals row because that is going to interfere with the chart that I want to send. So I'll somehow want to remove the last row. So I can do that by simply using a built-in array method called splice. So on the select columns, I'm going to remove starting at the last row. So that is length -1 because this is 0 index. And I want to remove the last row. So if I do this, I'm going to get one less, and the last one is the data where the table ends. So this will ensure that no matter how big or small the table is, I will always get just the top row, which is the header, and I will get all the rows associated with the table, excluding the header row. Now, because I'm using Splice, I'm not really using any condition to check whether the table totals row is present or not. I can kind of make some adjustments to make sure that this table is this logic is a little bit more reliable. So I can check, hey, if table actually has the totals row. So there is a method called get show totals. So this tells me if that it returns a Boolean value and says whether the table total row is present or not. So this is one way to do this. The second way to do is to always ensure that there is a tables row, and always splice it. And you can do that by table set totals to be always true. And then you don't need to really do the condition. You can just remove the last row, knowing that there's always going to be a tables row. So one of the two approaches will work. Okay, so now I've applied the logic that I need to select the columns. I want to then create a new worksheet and then update the data in that new worksheet with the select columns. So for that, I will write a new function called update range, and that will receive the sheet where I want to update the data. So I have to declare its type, and then the data, which is of 2-dimensional string. And this is the same data that I just selected, the 2 columns. And then if you don't know the target range address, one way to compute that is to get the target range based on the data that you're interested. So in this case, I have 2 columns and 8 rows, but that might be different. So to do this in a dynamic fashion, what I can do is create the target range from the top left corner, which is A1. And then there's a method called resize range. So what this does is from A1, get me a new range, and it accepts two parameters, the delta rows and the delta columns. If you give it a positive number, it'll expand. If you give it a negative number, it'll contract. So I need to expand this. So I will say I know the data length -1. So that's how many rows that I want. And for columns, I'm going to select one of the rows and compute its length, which is the number of columns, -1. I mean, I can always do 2 here because I know the, or rather 1 here because I know I need to expand by 1 column, but this is a little bit more dynamic in nature. And then from the target range, I can set its values to the same data. And then I'll just simply return the target range for further processing on the main function. I'll declare that this is returning a range object. Now I can create a new worksheet by doing add worksheet, and I'll call this chart sheet. It returns whatever it creates, and then I will call the update range function by passing it the sheet, where I want the data, and then the actual columns that I've selected, right? So if I run this, it should create a new chart sheet, apply the data that I've selected, and then update the range. Okay, so it did create chart sheet, and I see that I have the data that I need. So there is one catch here, which is if I run it the next time, it'll likely fail, saying that, hey, there is already a chart by the name of chart sheet. So it tells me that, hey, on line number 13, the add worksheet is failing because a resource of the same name already exists. So to prevent that, I can just do chart sheet, or rather get the chart sheet, get the worksheet by name. So workbook get worksheet with the same name. So that means, hey, that if it exists, just delete it because I'm going to recreate it. I don't care about the existing sheet. The next time it runs, it's going to delete if it exists. If it doesn't exist, no problem. It will continue to the next line and it will create it regardless. So now, I can run this many times. It will not fail. So that's just a simple technique you can use for removing objects that you no longer need, and you can create a new one. Now that I have the sheet, I want to now create the chart on top of it. I'll come back and reuse the code that I created from the recording, and just simply replace the sheet name with a new sheet, right? And then I want to position the chart to maybe say D1. On the same chart that was created, I will set its position to be, say, at D1. Okay, to avoid confusion, I'll just remove this temporary sheet I created manually. Okay, so now if I run this, it should I need to change the reference. All right, so the second parameter of add chart expects the range. So I'm going to use the same range that the update range is returning. So the update range returns the range on which it just set the values, which is that. And then I'm going to use that as the input for creation of chart. So run it again and make sure that the chart is created and it's positioned to D1 as a top left corner. So that I'm happy with. Now that I've created this, I'll want to send this data as an image so the Power Automation can email this. So one way to do that is to extract the image associated with the chart. So I can do that by simply getting its image. Get image method. So this returns the base64 encoded image. And you can also specify its height and fading mode and all of that, but for now I'm just going to extract the base image. In addition, if I'm interested in extracting the range, I can also do that by getting table image right. So both of these have sort of base64 string representation. If I want to return both, I'll need an object that can hold both. So first I'll define an interface. I'll call it image data. And then I'll say, hey, this is chart image, is of type string, and then table image is of type string. So this is what I want to return. So out of the main function, so I'll come back to the main function and declare that, hey, this is going to return this image data interface. And it's complaining that, hey, you're not actually returning anything that matches that criteria. So I will return an object and include the chart image and then the table image. All right, so I don't know why it didn't like the name chart image, or so I just had to change the interface name here to be a different report images. And now I have the two pieces of data that I need to return. So chart image and the table image. So I think this kind of completes what I want out of the script. Now I want to create a Power Automation flow that can then use this to email these two images. To do that, I will go back to my Power Automation, create a flow. I call it email report images. Manually trigger this for now. And what I want to do is come back and use the script. I'll call it report images. First, I will run that Office script, which is run through the run script action. I'll locate the file. Report images. So one thing I forgot is to actually, calculate. So before I do any of the computation, I'm just gonna do workbook, get application, and calculate. Do a full calculation. So before I test it, I will come back and update this. So 0.35. Just change some discount amounts. So what I expect is when I run this, it'll update the amount due based on the new discount amounts. Extract the data, create a new chart sheet, and create the chart, position the chart, extract the images of the chart and on this table range, and then pass that down to the next action. So I will save this, go back to the script. Next, I will use an email action, create email, another send email. For now, I'm just gonna send this to this test user I'm working with. I'll say, like, please review report data, and let's say now next I want to include the two images. So I will say, hey, this is the chart, and you can customize this however you want, and then say the data. So I need to insert two images. You can do that by simply switching over to the code view, and then the place where I want the image to be sent, I can include an image tag, and because I'm not passing like an image, I'm passing a base64 string. There is a specific prefix you need to do. So I'll copy this here, and you can do the same on your end. So this is the image source. What it's saying is, hey, the data is of type of base64. And here I'm going to use it automatically tells me the dynamic data I can include, the chart image, and I will do the same thing, and this time I'll include the table image. Right? So I'll save it, and I'll test this manually. So while it's running, I'll switch over here. I'll have to refresh to see the latest data. Okay, so now it's finished running. I'm gonna go refresh it. I expect the amount to have changed. Okay, so that has changed. And I'll switch over to the email. Okay, so you see that I received a new email that I just sent through the Power Automation flow. It says, hey, please review the chart image and then the range image. Okay, so that concludes the demonstration here of how to use Office scripts to manipulate the data in Excel, do calculation, and extract pieces of data. Here I extracted the images. You can also send the raw data if you want to use that and customize that in your image. Simply pass in the text in addition to the images, and you can do that. All right, so you can find the source code that I've used as part of the description link. So check out the description link. It'll point you to the source code. All right, thank you. Thanks for watching.